Have you ever really paid attention to what a gravesite looks like or how it is maintained? I have noticed that many people only begin to worry about a grave when it starts to flood seriously. Before that, they do not seem to care much. Everything just goes on as usual. But once the grave is flooded for an extended period, the whole family starts to feel uneasy, worried, and no longer at peace like before. That worry gradually turns into a sense of discomfort, pushing people to start looking for ways to solve the problem, even if they do not fully understand what is actually causing it. So in today's video, let's take a closer look together. Does a flooded grave affect the descendants in any way? And how should we deal with serious flooding situations at the gravesite? Before we move on, if you have any personal wishes or blessings you would like to send to yourself or your loved ones, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. For example, something like, "I wish for my family to always be safe and happy, and may good things always come to me and my family." And now, before diving into the details of what kind of waterlogged grave poses a serious concern and how to handle it, we first need to understand clearly what it means for a grave to be flooded and whether that really has any effect on the family members left behind. I will walk you through these questions step by step. A flooded grave, or a grave that has been filled with water, is simply a condition where rainwater, groundwater, or moisture from the surrounding environment seeps into the grave, or even completely submerges it. For instance, if a grave is built in a low-lying area, near a pond or lake, or if it was not properly waterproofed, then after heavy rains, water can collect inside and fail to drain away, causing the grave to become waterlogged. From a Feng Shui perspective, what people often notice is the feeling of the environment around the grave. When water sits for too long, the area becomes damp, cold, and heavy. People visiting the grave may begin to feel uncomfortable after just a short while and want to leave quickly. And when someone has to be in a place that feels so heavy, it can easily bring down their spirit. It becomes easier to feel tired, irritable, or even pessimistic. This is not some mystical idea. It is very easy to understand how our surroundings can affect the emotional and mental state of the living. But the part that touches us the most deeply is spiritual. For many families, a gravesite is a sacred place, a way of expressing respect and remembrance toward their ancestors. So when they hear that a grave has become flooded, an image often forms in their minds of their loved ones being soaked by rain, wet and uncomfortable, and that thought alone brings deep sadness. When something goes wrong in the family, people often link it to the grave. Business slows down, it must be the grave. Children argue, maybe the grave. Someone gets sick, again, maybe the grave. It might sound a bit funny, but when people are under stress, they naturally look for somewhere to place their worries, and the gravesite often becomes that outlet. In the end, the most noticeable impact is not a direct misfortune, but the inner unease passed down to the living. That unease seeps into everyday life, shaping how people speak, make decisions, and feel at home. That is why, from a spiritual point of view, a flooded grave does not always bring direct disasters. Instead, it disrupts the descendants' sense of peace. And when that peace is lost, it shows in how they talk, act, handle problems, and how energy flows in the household. Life begins to feel off balance in a clear way. But once the grave is cared for again, cleaned up, dried out, and respectfully maintained, and when the family calmly sees it as an act of honoring their ancestors, that inner peace starts to return. And with peace in the heart, many family matters naturally feel lighter and easier to manage. Still, I have to say, every flooded grave case is different. Some are mild, others more prolonged and complex. To fix them properly, we must assess the level of severity first. Jumping in without knowing the root cause will not lead to lasting results. Graves in low-lying spots are serious and should be dealt with early. Water builds up there every rainy season, keeping the soil constantly moist. In Feng Shui, this is called a restless grave. From a practical view, it means the environment is no longer stable for the grave. Over time, the effects add up. The grave wears down faster, the ground weakens, and repairs become frequent but never conclusive. The family is left with a lingering feeling that something is always off. It is a stress that does not explode, but slowly weighs on everyone. Fixing it is not about making it look better, but stopping the water from collecting. Observe where water flows in and where it gets stuck. If old ditches are filled, reopen them. If water comes from many directions, make channels to lead it away. The goal is to keep water from staying there after rain. Important: do not raise just the grave while the rest stays low. That can worsen the problem by pushing water toward the grave. If you raise the ground, do it evenly with proper drainage, just enough so water flows around the grave. Now the second case, a grave that stayed dry for years, but only recently began to flood. This is flooding due to change. The grave has not changed, but the surrounding water flow has. Families often think, it was fine before, so they delay acting. But changes like new roads, raised land, or blocked ditches can suddenly redirect water, and the grave becomes the new low point. This kind of flooding can damage a grave quickly. The ground softens, moss spreads, and water seeps into cracks. It is not spiritual, just environmental change. Families may fix small parts, but the flooding keeps coming back. The best approach is to identify what changed nearby. When did the flooding start? Since then, were there any new roads, raised surfaces, or blocked ditches? Walk around the grave, look for water trapped or ground that was raised. Find the choke point, and you will find your answer. Once you know the cause, the fix is usually simple. Reopen drainage or guide water to flow away by gently adjusting the ground so it drains naturally. If needed, adjust the gravestone slightly, but always along with drainage improvements. Since this is a recent problem, fixing the root cause usually brings fast, lasting results. The third case involves graves that are not just flooded but have soggy soil, a strong musty smell, and discolored earth. I consider this a heavy, serious type of flooding. At this point, it is no longer just about rain that comes and goes. This kind of flooding shows that the area has been waterlogged for a long time, most commonly because of a seasonal rise in the underground water table or because the soil retains too much water. When the earth becomes muddy and starts to change color, it means the grave has almost no time to dry out and stabilize. The grave becomes prone to sinking, shifting, tilting, and the gravestone can lean or crack more easily. When the soil reaches a point where it loses its vitality and even changes color, the natural process of decomposition is the return to the earth. To put it simply, slows down and no longer happens smoothly. This creates a heavy, damp, stagnant feeling, as if everything is being held back, not able to dissolve, not able to flow. For those who are still alive, the impact of this case is often stronger than other types of flooding because it creates the constant impression that the grave is never truly dry. Descendants who visit the grave can clearly see and smell the problem, so it is hard to ignore. And beyond the psychological impact, there is also a very real issue. The musty smell and damp environment can cause respiratory discomfort for some people, especially those with asthma or allergies. With this situation, the first thing to do is to work with the cemetery management or maintenance team to confirm whether that area is part of a high water table zone or suffers from long-term water retention. They usually have seasonal data on this. If it turns out that the soil in the area is chronically waterlogged, then there are two clear paths to take. First, stabilize the grave and the surrounding ground. Remove the soggy topsoil and replace it with clean, solid soil. Rebuild the area firmly and compact it just enough to reduce sinking and musty buildup. The goal here is to clean it, firm it, and stabilize it so the grave stops deteriorating. Second, if the waterlogging is permanent and keeps returning year after year, the most reasonable long-term solution is usually to relocate the grave to a higher, drier location or choose a burial or casing method that suits the cemetery's regulations. These steps should be handled through professional services, as they involve specific procedures and safety standards. The fourth case involves graves where the plants around them keep turning yellow, becoming sparse and covered with moss, and the soil always feels damp. This is a major red flag. Plants do not lie. They react very strongly to soil conditions. If the ground around a grave stays moist for too long, or if the soil is suffocating and water sits just below the surface, you will see it clearly in the way plants struggle to grow. Many people think it is just due to poor maintenance. But if the family has already cleaned it up, pulled weeds, and trimmed everything, and just a few weeks later it looks the same again, then the problem is not about care. It is about the soil conditions. One of the most obvious signs is repeated spending without solving the root cause. The money does not disappear all at once, but it slowly drains away over time. One day you are cleaning, another day you are filling and patching, then fixing again. It keeps going like that, and despite all the effort, the problem does not improve much. It leaves people feeling like they are always fixing things, always spending, but never really getting anywhere. For this case, I usually recommend that families clean and lightly loosen the soil around the grave. Remove thick moss, decaying leaves, and the slippery layers that hold moisture for a long time. Then, lightly till the top layer of soil so it is not so compacted and suffocating. If the area is overly shaded by large trees, dense bushes, or nearby walls, trim them just enough so that the grave can receive more sunlight and wind. It may sound simple, but sunlight and wind are nature's best dehumidifiers. Once the surface dries out more, plants usually start to recover on their own even without needing to replant anything. Another tip I often give is to avoid stepping too much or putting weight directly on the area around the grave. Many families tend to stand in the same spot, place offerings, or kneel in the same area, unknowingly compacting the soil and making it even harder for grass to grow. Just shifting those habits a little, standing or placing things in different spots, can help reduce soil pressure and actually make a visible difference. After doing all of that, the family should monitor the area for a few weeks, especially after sunny days. If moss begins to fade, the ground dries more quickly, and the plants stop turning yellow, then the approach is working. But if nothing changes after multiple rounds of cleaning, trimming, and soil loosening, then it is time to accept the reality. The soil in this area may have a permanently moist condition. And if that is the case, the family should stop burning money on cosmetic fixes that only last for a short time. At that point, it is wiser to move to a more sustainable solution based on the conditions and cemetery regulations, so there is a clear resolution and no more long-term waste of effort or resources. And with that, I have walked you through the most common flooding situations that graves tend to face. I do not expect you to immediately believe everything after hearing this, and I certainly do not want you to feel scared. All I hope is that you feel a little less confused. Because once your mind is clearer, you will be able to see the problem more easily, what type of flooding is happening, whether it is temporary or long-lasting, whether there are signs of damage, and what exactly needs to be done and to what extent. When a grave is at peace, it is easier for the descendants to feel at peace too. But peace does not mean you have to do something grand, or force something to happen, or act out of panic. Sometimes, peace simply means you are willing to sit down, take a good look, and see things clearly. If the flooding is brief, let it pass. If it lasts, then plan for a more lasting solution. Every family has different circumstances. There is no one-size-fits-all answer. You do not need to force yourself to follow someone else's example, and you definitely do not need to believe in fear-based warnings that take away your sense of control. If you are currently going through a time when your heart feels unsettled because of concerns over a grave, I hope you remember this small principle. We care for graves to show respect, not to try to change our fate. Taking care of them properly is enough. Doing what you can manage is what makes it last. Sometimes, what we really need is not another ritual, but a calm decision. Handle the practical matters practically, and for the emotional matters, keep your heart steady. When children and grandchildren live in harmony, show respect, understand one another, and show love, that, in many ways, is already a kind of blessing. It is not loud, but it lasts. Before we end, take a moment of quiet just for yourself and silently repeat a simple sentence in your mind. May those who have passed rest in peace, and may those who are living always be safe and sound. Then, move forward. No need to rush. No need to be extreme. Do what needs to be done clearly and calmly. The rest, just focus on keeping your heart a little lighter. It does not have to be completely light, just a bit lighter than yesterday. That is already enough.